Captain Sarah Chen stared at the massive holographic display floating above the command deck of the Earth Defense Station Prometheus. The alien vessel on the screen was unlike anything humanity had ever seen. It stretched for miles, a dark metallic structure that seemed to bend light around its edges. Spikes and towers jutted from its surface in patterns that hurt to look at directly. "Ma'am, they're broadcasting on all frequencies," Lieutenant Rodriguez called from his communications station. His voice carried a tremor that he was trying hard to hide. "Universal Translator is picking up the signal." Sarah nodded, her dark eyes never leaving the screen. She had been expecting this day for years. Ever since humanity had developed faster-than-light travel and started exploring nearby star systems, the question wasn't if they would meet alien life, but when. She just hadn't expected their first visitors to arrive in something that looked like a floating nightmare. "Put it through," she ordered, straightening her uniform jacket. The main screen flickered, and suddenly they were looking at something that made several crew members take involuntary steps backward. The alien was tall, easily 8 feet, with pale gray skin that seemed to shift and move like liquid mercury. Its head was elongated, with 4 eyes arranged in a diamond pattern on its face. When it opened what might have been a mouth, rows of crystalline teeth caught the light. "Greetings, primitive species of the 3rd planet." The creature spoke, its voice somehow managing to sound both melodious and terrifying at the same time. "I am High Inquisitor Zarthak of the Dominion Empire. You will now prepare for immediate surrender and incorporation into our glorious civilization." Sarah blinked. She looked around at her crew, all of whom were staring at the screen with various expressions of shock, fear, and confusion. Then she looked back at the alien. "I'm sorry, did you just demand our surrender?" she asked, her voice carefully neutral. The alien's 4 eyes seemed to focus on her with predatory intensity. "Your species has been evaluated. Your technology is primitive. Your military capabilities are laughable. Your resistance would be both futile and annoying. You have one of your planetary rotations to submit, or we will begin the pacification process." There was a long moment of silence on the bridge. Sarah could hear the soft hum of the station's life support systems, the quiet beeping of various monitors, and the barely audible breathing of her crew. Then, from somewhere near the back of the bridge, someone snorted. It was Lieutenant Kim from the Weapons Division. He had his hand clamped over his mouth, but his shoulders were shaking. The snort seemed to break some kind of spell because suddenly Engineer Martinez started chuckling. Then Ensign Patel began giggling. Within seconds, the entire bridge crew was fighting to contain their laughter. The alien's expression shifted to what might have been confusion. "Explain this reaction," it demanded. Sarah tried to compose herself, but a smile kept tugging at the corners of her mouth. "I'm sorry, it's just... You do realize you're essentially calling us to surrender based on a single scan of our outer planet, right?" "Our sensors are the most advanced in the known galaxy," Zarthak replied stiffly. "We have detected your pathetic energy signatures, your primitive chemical propulsion systems, and your laughably weak defensive capabilities." This time, Sarah couldn't help herself. She started laughing. Not a polite chuckle or a nervous giggle, but a full, deep belly laugh that echoed through the command center. "Chemical propulsion," she gasped between laughs. "You think we're still using chemical rockets?" Lieutenant Rodriguez had tears streaming down his face. "Should we tell him about the antimatter engines?" he wheezed. "Or the quantum tunneling drives?" added Dr. Yamoto from the science station. "Oh! Oh!" Engineer Martinez waved his hand excitedly. "What about the fact that this entire station is powered by a contained micro-black hole?" The alien's 4 eyes were now moving independently, each trying to focus on a different laughing human. "Impossible. Our scans clearly indicate—" "Your scans," Sarah interrupted, still grinning, "detected exactly what we wanted you to detect. You see, we've been monitoring your approach for the last 3 months. Did you really think we'd just sit here with our pants down waiting for you to show up? The color of Zarthak's skin shifted from pale gray to a sickly green. 3 months? But our stealth technology is adorable, finished Dr. Yamato. Really, the way you bend light around your hull? We figured that out about 50 years ago. These days, our kids use better cloaking tech in their video games. Sarah walked closer to the main screen, her hands clasped behind her back. Here's the thing, Zarthak. You made a classic mistake. You assumed that because you couldn't easily detect our advanced technology, we didn't have any, but humans have this funny habit of hiding our best stuff until we really need it. Lieutenant Rodriguez, she called without turning around. Would you mind showing our new friend what we've been working on? Rodriguez's fingers danced across his control panel. Suddenly, the space around the alien vessel began to shimmer. Ships began to decloak. Not one or two, but dozens. Sleek, deadly-looking vessels that seemed to materialize out of nothing, surrounding the massive alien ship in perfect formation. But that wasn't the impressive part. The impressive part was when the space behind the alien vessel began to ripple, and something the size of a small moon slowly faded into view. The Earth Defense Fleet's flagship, the Terran Hammer, hung in space like a metallic mountain. Its surface bristled with weapon systems that looked like they could crack planets. "Sweet, merciful void," Zarthak whispered, his voice barely audible. "Oh, that's just the local defense fleet," Sarah said casually. "Would you like to see what our actual military looks like?" Before the alien could respond, Lieutenant Kim spoke up. "Captain, I'm reading massive energy signatures throughout the system. Looks like the stealth mines we laid last week are powering up." "Stealth mines?" Zarthak's voice cracked. Sarah nodded thoughtfully. "About 10,000 of them scattered throughout the system. Each one packs enough punch to vaporize a ship your size. We weren't sure if you were coming alone or bringing friends." The alien's skin was now cycling through colors like a confused chameleon. "This is impossible. Our intelligence clearly indicated that this species had barely achieved interstellar travel. You should be throwing rocks and sticks at us." "Well, there's your first lesson about humanity," Sarah said, her smile becoming slightly predatory. "We're very, very good at making people underestimate us. It's kind of our thing." Dr. Yamato cleared her throat. "Captain, should I tell him about Project Black Hole? The artificial singularity weapons? Not yet, I think. Let's save some surprises." Engineer Martinez raised his hand like a student in class. "What about the Dimensional Warfare Division? Or the time manipulation experiments?" added Ensign Patel. Sarah held up a hand. "Easy, people. Let's not overwhelm our guest completely." Zarthak's 4 eyes were now spinning in different directions. Time manipulation, dimensional warfare, artificial singularities, these are theoretical technologies. Even the Empire hasn't fully mastered such things. "Yeah, well," Sarah shrugged. "Humans get bored easily. We need interesting projects to keep us occupied. Speaking of which, Dr. Yamato, how's that research into reversing entropy coming along?" "We're making good progress, Captain. Should have a working prototype within the next few decades." The alien made a sound that might have been a whimper. Sarah turned back to the screen, her expression becoming more serious. "Now, Zarthak, here's what's going to happen. You're going to take your little ship and go back to your empire. You're going to tell them that Earth is under the protection of the Terran Defense Coalition, and that any attempt at invasion or conquest will be met with the kind of overwhelming force that will make your nightmares seem like pleasant dreams. But the Empire has conquered thousands of worlds," Zarthak stammered. "We are the dominant force in this sector of the galaxy." "Were," Sarah corrected. "You were the dominant force. Now you're just another species that made the mistake of threatening humanity without doing your homework first." Lieutenant Rodriguez looked up from his station. "Captain, I'm detecting energy spikes from their weapon systems. I think they're trying to target us." Sarah sighed. Well, that's disappointing. I was hoping they were smarter than that. She turned to Lieutenant Kim. Would you mind discouraging them? Kim's fingers flew over his controls. On the main screen, they could see one of the smaller human vessels fire a single brief pulse of energy. The beam struck the alien ship's forward weapon array, which immediately went dark. That was a warning shot, Sarah explained pleasantly. The next one will be significantly less gentle. Zarthak was now a pale yellow color, which Sarah assumed was the alien equivalent of turning white with fear. How did you penetrate our shields so easily? Phase-shifted quantum disruptors, Dr. Yamoto replied helpfully. They ignore most conventional shielding. We developed them after studying some old alien wrecks we found floating around Jupiter. Alien wrecks? Zarthak's voice was barely a whisper. Oh, yes, Sarah nodded. Quite a few species have tried to conquer Earth over the years. They're all very nice artificial reefs now. The fish seem to like them. The bridge crew was starting to laugh again, and Sarah could see that Zarthak was beginning to realize just how badly he had miscalculated. Now, Sarah continued, I'm going to give you exactly 1 hour to leave our system. If you're still here after that, we're going to assume you're hostile. And trust me, you don't want to see what happens next. 1 hour? Zarthak's skin was now cycling rapidly between yellow and green. 59 minutes and 43 seconds, Lieutenant Rodriguez announced helpfully. The alien's image flickered as he apparently turned to speak to someone off-screen. Sarah could hear what sounded like panicked chittering in the background. Hi, Inquisitor, came a voice from the alien ship. Our tactical computers are recommending immediate retreat. They're reading energy signatures that shouldn't be possible. Zarthak turned back to the screen. This conversation is not over, humans. Sarah's smile was razor-sharp. Oh, but it is. Unless you want it to be a very short conversation with a very permanent ending. The transmission cut off abruptly. On the tactical display, they could see the massive alien vessel beginning to turn away from Earth. Think they'll be back? Asked Lieutenant Rodriguez. Sarah watched the retreating ship and shook her head. Not them. But they'll tell their friends, and their friends will tell their friends. Word will spread. Is that good or bad? Asked Ensign Patel. Sarah's smile became thoughtful. That depends entirely on how smart the rest of the galaxy turns out to be. As the alien vessel disappeared into the dark of space, the bridge crew began to relax. But Sarah remained at her post, staring out at the stars. She had a feeling that this was just the B3 weeks after High Inquisitor Zarthak's humiliating retreat from Earth. The Imperial Council convened in emergency session aboard the Dominion flagship Eternal Supremacy. The massive vessel, large enough to house entire cities within its hull, drifted in the void between star systems, its dark metal surface reflecting nothing but the cold light of distant suns. Emperor Veltar sat upon his throne of living crystal, his 12-foot frame radiating the kind of authority that had crushed 1,000 civilizations. His skin was deep purple, marked with silver scars that told the story of countless battles. 4 arms, each ending in clawed hands, gripped the armrests as he listened to Zarthak's report with growing disbelief. Let me understand this correctly, the Emperor's voice rumbled through the vast chamber like distant thunder. You approached a primitive world, demanded their surrender, and they laughed at you? Zarthak knelt before the throne, his gray skin now permanently tinged with the yellow of shame. Around the chamber, dozens of other species that made up the Empire's leadership watched with barely concealed amusement. The reptilian Eschatar hissed softly among themselves, while the insectoid Klakren clicked their mandibles in what might have been laughter. Your Imperial Magnificence, Zarthak began, his voice shaking. The intelligence reports were completely inaccurate. These humans, they are not what they appear to be. General Corvash, a massive creature that looked like a cross between a bear and a tank, stepped forward. His species, the Brutari, had been the Empire's primary military force for over 2 centuries. How bad could these humans possibly be? Our records show they achieved interstellar travel only recently. They should be cowering in terror, not laughing. "Show them," Emperor Veltar commanded. Zarthak activated a holographic display that filled the center of the chamber. The recording showed the encounter with the human fleet, the impossible ships decloaking, the massive flagship appearing like a metallic mountain in space. As the human captain's laughter echoed through the chamber, several council members shifted uncomfortably. Admiral Thisara, the Empire's top naval commander, studied the display with her 6 eyes. Her aquatic species had evolved in the crushing depths of ocean worlds, giving them an instinctive understanding of pressure and force. "Those energy signatures," she said slowly. "They're reading off the scale. How is that possible?" "It gets worse," Zarthak continued miserably. He showed them the recording of the human weapon easily penetrating their shields, the casual mention of artificial singularities and time manipulation, the 10,000 stealth mines scattered throughout the system. The chamber fell silent, except for the soft humming of the ship's systems. Emperor Veltar's 4 hands gripped his throne so tightly that the living crystal began to crack. "This must be some kind of deception," General Corvash declared. "No species could advance so quickly. It's impossible." Science Overseer Quillith, whose species looked like walking trees with too many eyes, rustled his leaves nervously. "Actually, General, I've been analyzing the data. The energy signatures are genuine. Whatever technology these humans possess, it's far more advanced than anything in our databases." "But how?" Admiral Thisara's voice carried a note of desperation. "Our intelligence network spans half the galaxy. How could an entire civilization develop such capabilities without our knowledge?" Emperor Veltar stood slowly, his massive frame casting shadows across the chamber. "There is only one explanation. These humans are not what they appear to be. They are either an ancient civilization that has been hiding its true nature or—" He paused, unwilling to voice the thought that was forming in his mind. "Or what, Your Magnificence?" asked Zarthak. "Or they are something entirely new, something the galaxy has never seen before." Meanwhile, back in the human home system, Captain Sarah Chen was dealing with problems of her own. The conference room aboard the Terran Hammer was packed with representatives from every major human faction: the United Earth Government, the Mars Colonial Authority, the Asteroid Mining Consortium, and dozens of others. Chancellor Williams, the elected head of the Earth Government, was not happy. "Captain Chen, your little show of force has created a diplomatic nightmare. We're receiving reports that alien fleets are massing in nearby systems. You may have started an interstellar war." Sarah sat calmly at the head of the table, her hands folded in front of her. "With respect, Chancellor, they started this when they demanded our surrender. What would you have preferred? That we roll over and submit?" Director Hassan from the Mars Authority leaned forward. "We could have negotiated, found a peaceful solution. Instead, you chose to humiliate them." "They humiliated themselves," Dr. Yamoto interjected from her seat beside Sarah. "Their arrogance blinded them to obvious tactical realities. That's not our fault." Admiral Crawford, the head of the Terran Defense Forces, pulled up a holographic display showing the outer edges of the solar system. "Regardless of fault, we now have a problem. Long-range sensors are detecting multiple fleets approaching from different directions. It looks like this empire is taking us seriously now." Sarah studied the display. Red dots marked the positions of incoming vessels, dozens of them, converging on Earth from multiple vectors. "How long until they arrive?" "Best estimate? 72 hours for the first wave, maybe a week for the full armada." Chancellor Williams rubbed his temples. This is madness. We're talking about fighting an entire galactic empire. Even with our technology, how can we possibly stand against such numbers? Sarah smiled, the same expression she'd worn when facing Zarthak. The same way humans have always won impossible fights, Chancellor. By being smarter, more creative, and more stubborn than anyone expects. Back aboard the Eternal Supremacy, the War Council was reaching similar conclusions about the impossibility of their situation, but from the opposite perspective. "We cannot allow this insult to stand," General Korvash growled. "If word spreads that a single world defeated an Imperial demand for surrender, rebellions will break out across the Empire." Emperor Veltar nodded grimly. "Agreed, but we must approach this carefully. These humans have demonstrated capabilities we don't fully understand." Admiral Tysara activated a tactical display. "I'm proposing an overwhelming force doctrine. We hit them with everything we have all at once. Even if their technology is superior, they can't possibly stand against the full might of the Imperial fleet." Science Overseer Quillith's leaves rustled with agitation. "Admiral, with respect, that may not be wise. If they truly possess the weapons they claimed, our entire fleet could be in danger." "What would you suggest?" the Emperor asked. "A probe. Send a smaller force first. Something large enough to test their capabilities, but not so large that we risk everything." General Korvash snorted. "Cowardice! We are the Dominion Empire. We do not test our enemies, we crush them." As the council argued, neither side fully understood what was about to unfold. The humans had indeed been preparing for this moment, but not in the way the Empire expected. Earth's greatest weapon wasn't its technology, impressive as that was. It was something far more dangerous. Human ingenuity combined with a complete refusal to accept defeat. Dr. Sarah Kim, the head of Earth's Xenobiology Institute, was presenting her findings to the Emergency Defense Committee. "We've been analyzing the biological data from Zarthak's transmission. Their reaction patterns, stress responses, even the way their skin changed color. I think I understand something fundamental about this empire." Admiral Crawford leaned forward. "What did you find?" "They're not explorers or scientists. They're conquerors, pure and simple. Look at their ship design, their communication patterns, even their body language. Everything about them screams predator species that has gotten very, very comfortable being at the top of the food chain." Captain Chen nodded thoughtfully. "Which means they've probably never faced serious resistance before." "Exactly. Most species they encounter likely submit immediately or get crushed. They've developed a standard operating procedure for both scenarios. But they have no experience dealing with prey that fights back effectively." Dr. Martinez from the Engineering Corps pulled up his own presentation. "That matches what we're seeing from their technology. Their weapons and defenses are designed for overwhelming force against inferior opponents. But there are weaknesses." "What kind of weaknesses?" asked Admiral Crawford. "Their shielding technology is brute force, not elegant. It can stop a lot of conventional attacks, but it's vulnerable to phase variance. Their weapons are powerful but inflexible, and their ships—" Martinez grinned. "Their ships are designed to intimidate first and fight second." Captain Chen was beginning to see the shape of a plan forming. "They're bullies, and bullies have a particular weakness." "Which is?" Chancellor Williams asked. "They don't know how to handle someone who hits back harder than expected." 3 days later, the first wave of the Imperial fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of Earth's solar system. 50 massive vessels, each one larger than anything in Earth's arsenal, arranged themselves in a perfect formation that was clearly designed to inspire terror. High Inquisitor Zarthak, who had been given one last chance to redeem himself, broadcast to the human worlds on all frequencies. "Humans of the third planet," his voice carried across the void, You have had time to reconsider your foolish defiance. The Empire offers you one final opportunity to surrender. Submit now, and your deaths will be quick. Continue to resist, and we will make your world burn for 1,000 years. The response came not from Captain Chen or any official representative of humanity. Instead, it was broadcast from a small civilian ship that slowly approached the Imperial fleet. The pilot was a teenage girl named Maria Santos, a student from the Luna City Academy. "Hi there," she said brightly, waving at the camera. "Thanks for coming all this way to visit us. We've prepared a little welcome party for you." Zarthak's 4 eyes focused on the small ship with confusion. "Child, you are in a combat zone. Return to your planet immediately." Maria giggled. "Oh, I'm not leaving. See, I volunteered for this mission. It's my senior project for school." "Your senior project?" "Yeah. I'm studying applied physics. And our teacher said we could do anything we wanted as long as it demonstrated advanced understanding of quantum mechanics, so I built this." She gestured excitedly behind her. The camera panned to show what appeared to be a small, innocuous-looking device floating in the back of her ship. It looked like nothing more than a metal sphere with some blinking lights. "What is that supposed to be?" Zarthak demanded. Maria's smile was blindingly innocent. "A quantum vacuum decay bomb. Want to see how it works?" The silence that followed could be felt across both fleets. "Quantum vacuum decay?" Zarthak's voice was barely a whisper. "Oh yeah, it's really cool. See, you take a small region of space-time and convince it that it would rather be in a lower energy state. Then it kind of cascades outward at the speed of light, turning everything it touches into free energy. My calculations show this little guy could take out about half a solar system before burning itself out." Admiral Thisara's voice crackled over the Imperial communication system. "Hi, Inquisitor. Our sensors are detecting massive quantum fluctuations from that device. If the child is telling the truth—" "But don't worry," Maria continued cheerfully. "I probably won't set it off. I mean, I'm only 17, so my math might be wrong. There's maybe a 10% chance it just fizzles out harmlessly." Zarthak's skin had gone completely white. "Child, please tell me you are joking." Maria tilted her head with the kind of innocent confusion that only teenagers can manage. "Joking? Why would I joke about my school project? Oh, but I should mention, this isn't the only one. My whole class built these things. There are about 50 of us spread out around the solar system right now." On the Imperial flagship, Emperor Veltar stared at the display showing the small human ship. 50, he said quietly. "Your Magnificence." Admiral Thisara's voice was tight with barely controlled panic. "If each of those devices is truly capable of quantum vacuum decay, they could sterilize this entire sector of space. And they gave them to children," Science Overseer Quillith added, his leaves now completely motionless with shock. Back on Maria's ship, the teenager was still chatting away happily. "Oh, and before I forget, my little sister wanted me to tell you something. She's only 12, so she's not all." The emergency retreat of the Imperial fleet from Earth's solar system sent shockwaves throughout the Dominion Empire that reached far beyond military circles. On the trading world of Nexhari, merchants who had grown wealthy selling weapons to newly conquered species found their inventories gathering dust. On the industrial planet of Korthun, factories that had churned out slave collars and pacification devices for 3 centuries stood idle. The news traveled through hyperspace communication networks like wildfire. The Empire had been turned away not by a massive military alliance, not by ancient weapons or forgotten technology, but by laughing humans who treated galactic conquest like a school science project. Captain Sarah Chen stood in the observation deck of the Terran Hammer, watching the stars and thinking about the reports that had been flooding in from across the galaxy. 3 months had passed since young Maria Santos had convinced 50 Imperial warships to retreat using nothing but teenage enthusiasm and creative physics. The fallout was still spreading. Captain, Lieutenant Rodriguez called from behind her. You have an incoming transmission. It's marked as priority diplomatic. Sarah turned from the window. From whom? That's the interesting part. The sender identifies as Ambassador Kethrall of the Free Worlds Coalition. Sarah raised an eyebrow. Never heard of them. Neither had anyone else until last week. Apparently, they're a group of species that recently broke away from the Empire. Sarah made her way to the communication center, where a holographic display was already active. The alien on the screen was unlike any she had encountered before. Tall and graceful, with translucent blue skin that seemed to glow from within and large eyes that held obvious intelligence, the being looked more like an angel than the nightmare creatures that made up most of the Empire. "Greetings, Captain Chen," the alien said, its voice melodic and warm. "I am Ambassador Kethrall of the Lumari people. I speak for 17 species that have recently declared independence from the Dominion Empire." "Congratulations," Sarah replied carefully, "though I have to ask, what does this have to do with Earth?" Kethrall's expression became something that might have been a smile. "Everything, Captain. You see, your encounter with High Inquisitor Zarthak was broadcast throughout the Empire as a demonstration of human primitive defiance. The Emperor intended it to show how foolish resistance was. I take it that plan didn't work out as expected? Indeed not. When we saw your response to their demands, when we heard your laughter, something awakened in us that had been sleeping for centuries. Hope." Sarah leaned back in her chair. This conversation was taking an unexpected turn. Hope? For 300 years, the Empire has convinced us that resistance was futile, that their technology, their military might, their sheer size made opposition impossible. But you showed us something different. You showed us that the Empire's greatest weapon isn't their ships or their weapons. What is it then? Fear. They rule through intimidation, through the assumption that they are invincible. But you laughed at them, Captain. You treated their threats like jokes. And in doing so, you broke the spell they had cast over half the galaxy. The implications of what Kethrall was saying began to dawn on Sarah. How many worlds are we talking about? The rebellion is spreading daily. The Helix sector declared independence yesterday. The Crystal Nebula colonies have stopped paying tribute. 3 of the Empire's most productive mining worlds have simply gone silent. Sarah felt a mixture of pride and concern. That's wonderful for those worlds, but I hope they understand what they're facing. The Empire won't give up their territories without a fight. Kethrall's glow dimmed slightly. Which brings me to why I'm contacting you. The Free Worlds Coalition would like to formally request an alliance with Earth. An alliance? Captain, we have numbers and resources, but we lack your technological advantages. The Empire has already begun mobilizing their core fleets to crush our rebellion. Without help, our independence will be short-lived. Sarah was quiet for a long moment. This was far beyond her authority to decide, but she could see the desperation in the alien's large eyes. Ambassador, I'll need to discuss this with my superiors, but I can tell you that humanity has never been fond of bullies. That is all we ask. In the meantime, I have something that might interest you. Kethrall activated a data transfer. This contains everything we know about the Empire's military capabilities, technological weaknesses, and strategic resources. Consider it a gesture of good faith. After the transmission ended, Sarah found herself staring at the data packet. The information contained within was staggering. The Dominion Empire wasn't just large, it was massive beyond anything humanity had imagined. Thousands of worlds, hundreds of different species, resources that spanned entire sectors of the galaxy. But buried in the data were weaknesses. The Empire was old, set in its ways, dependent on fear and overwhelming force rather than innovation. Their technology hadn't meaningfully advanced in centuries because they had never needed it to. Why improve when you could simply crush any opposition? Dr. Yamato appeared at Sarah's shoulder, studying the data with fascination. This is incredible. Look at their logistics networks, their communication delays, their command structure. It's all designed for managing a static empire, not fighting a dynamic war. What do you mean? They're used to conquering one world at a time, usually against minimal resistance. But a galaxy-wide rebellion? They have no experience with that kind of distributed conflict. Engineer Martinez joined them, pulling up technical specifications on the Empire's ships. And their technology is incredibly standardized. The same shields, the same weapons, the same vulnerabilities across their entire fleet. Sarah began to see the shape of something forming in her mind. Doctor, how long would it take to manufacture countermeasures to their standard systems? If we focus just on their shields and primary weapons, maybe 6 weeks for a working prototype. And how long to transmit those countermeasures to our new friends in the coalition? Dr. Yamamoto's eyes lit up with understanding. About 6 seconds, if we use quantum entanglement communication. Meanwhile, on the imperial capital world of Sector Prime, Emperor Veltar was discovering that ruling a galactic empire was significantly more complicated when half of your subjects were actively rebelling. General Korvash stood before the throne, his massive frame radiating frustration. Your Magnificence, the situation continues to deteriorate. We've lost contact with another 12 systems in the past week alone. How is this possible? The Emperor demanded. These are primitive species. Most of them barely achieved spaceflight when we conquered them. Admiral Thaisara stepped forward with her own report. It appears they're coordinating their efforts, sire. Intelligence suggests they're sharing resources and technology. Some of our recent encounters have shown them using weapons and tactics we've never seen before. Science Overseer Quillith's leaves rustled nervously. There are also reports of human advisors appearing throughout the rebellion. Small groups, usually just 3 or 4 individuals, but their impact has been disproportionate. Emperor Veltar's 4 hands clenched into fists. Explain. The crystalline hegemony managed to destroy an entire Imperial battle group last week. The engagement lasted less than 20 minutes. Preliminary analysis suggests they used human-designed shield disruptors. And the Thermal Lords managed to capture one of our supply depots using what appears to be human stealth technology, added Admiral Thaisara. The Emperor was silent for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice carried a dangerous edge. It appears these humans have decided to make this their war as well. General Korvash stepped forward eagerly. Give me the word, Your Magnificence, and I will take the full Imperial fleet to their homeworld. We will burn it to ash and scatter the remains across space. And what of their vacuum decay weapons, their dimensional inverters, their time manipulation technology? The general's enthusiasm dimmed slightly. Perhaps we could negotiate terms. Emperor Veltar stood from his throne, his massive form casting shadows across the chamber. No, we will not negotiate with these creatures, but neither will we attack them directly until we fully understand their capabilities. Then what do you suggest, sire? Asked Admiral Thaisara. We will demonstrate to the galaxy what happens to those who oppose us. The rebellion thinks it has human protection? Very well. We will crush every rebelling world so thoroughly that even the humans will think twice about interfering. The orders went out within hours. Every available Imperial fleet was to converge on the rebelling systems. No quarter would be given, no mercy shown. The Empire would drown the rebellion in blood and terror, and if the humans wanted to intervene, they could try to stop it. But the Empire had made a fundamental miscalculation. They assumed that humans would be deterred by the threat of massive casualties among their alien allies. They didn't understand that humans had a very particular reaction to genocide. Captain Chen received the coalition's desperate plea for help while reviewing tactical reports. The message was from Ambassador Kethral. But the being on the screen looked nothing like the confident diplomat from their first meeting. Kethral's luminescent skin was dim, their large eyes filled with despair. "Captain, the Empire has begun what they call purification sweeps. 3 worlds have already been sterilized, billions dead in the past week alone. If this continues, the rebellion will be over within a month." Sarah felt something cold and hard settle in her stomach. "How bad is it?" "They're not just destroying military targets. They're targeting civilians, infrastructure, anything that could support resistance. They want to make an example that will terrify the rest of the galaxy into submission." The transmission ended, leaving Sarah staring at a blank screen. She thought about the laughter that had started all of this. The genuine amusement at the Empire's arrogant demands. That laughter felt like it belonged to a different universe now. Lieutenant Rodriguez appeared beside her. "Captain, I'm getting reports from Fleet Command. They want to know if we're going to intervene." Sarah was quiet for a long moment. "Rodriguez, how many ships do we have available for immediate deployment?" "The full defense fleet, plus about 30 deep space vessels. Maybe 60 ships total." "And the Empire?" "According to Coalition intelligence, they're moving over 3,000 ships toward rebel territory." The odds were absurd. 60 human ships against 3,000 Imperial vessels. It should have been suicide. Sarah found herself smiling. "Rodriguez, send a message to Admiral Crawford. Tell him we're going to need everything we've got. And contact Dr. Yamamoto. I want to know if those new weapon systems are ready for field testing." "Captain, are we really going to take on the entire Imperial fleet?" Sarah's smile became something sharp and predatory. "Rodriguez, I want you to think about what humanity is really good at." "Ma'am, we're good at winning fights we have no business winning. We're good at taking impossible situations and finding ways to turn them upside down. But most of all, we're very, very good at making bullies regret the day they decided to pick on someone weaker than themselves." She stood and headed for the bridge, calling over her shoulder. "And besides, they still don't understand the most important thing about humans." "Which is?" Sarah's laughter echoed through the corridor. But this time, it wasn't the amused chuckling that had greeted Zarthak's demands. This was something darker, more dangerous. The kind of laughter that came right before humanity reminded the universe why picking a fight with Earth was generally considered a bad idea. "They still think this is their war," she said. "They're about to learn that they just made it ours." The final phase of the conflict was about to begin, and the Dominion Empire was about to discover that making humanity laugh was nothing compared to making them angry. Owed to have one of the big bombs yet. But she did build a really neat dimensional inverter for her science fair project. It's sitting right next to Earth, waiting to turn your entire fleet inside out if anything happens to me. Dimensional inverter? Zarthak looked like he was about to faint. "Yeah, she's really smart for her age. Much better at math than I am. Her calculations show a 97% success rate, which is way better than my 10% margin of error." The Imperial fleet hung motionless in space, 50 of the most powerful warships ever constructed, completely paralyzed by the cheerful chatter of one human teenager. "So anyway," Maria continued, "I was supposed to ask if you'd like to surrender now, or if you want to wait and see what the grown-ups brought to this party. Because I have to tell you, some of their projects make my little vacuum bomb look like a firecracker." High Inquisitor Zarthak closed his 4 eyes and tried to imagine how he was going to explain this to the Emperor, beginning of humanity's introduction to the wider galaxy. And despite everything that had just happened, she found herself looking forward to the next encounter. After all, humans had always been at their best when someone told them what they couldn't do. The laughter that had started this encounter was still echoing in her mind. It had been the perfect response, really. Not fear, not anger, not even defiance. Just genuine amusement at the sheer audacity of someone demanding their surrender. She had a feeling the galaxy was about to learn a very important lesson about humanity. They were never more dangerous than when they were laughing.